All right, I'm a little early. I'm just trying to figure out camera stuff. Maybe I'll just do it like this. Everybody hear me? Pretty much. I see Chuck, Jamie's here, Deborah's here. Sweet. Maybe I could change the camera here. Hey, how's everybody? I can change this. Oh, we got some people rolling in. Scott's here. Jamie's here. Cold one tonight in Windsor. Yeah, it is. It's cold over here in Stony Point too. The wind off the lake is awful. Steve's here. Hi, Steve. Just pulling some stuff up here. Last minute. Oh, Tori's here. Hi, Tori. Steve, Henry, Scott. You're in Chatham. My daughter's in Chatham right now at Pure Dance Academy. That's where she's on the competitive dance team there. So she's over there for the night. So that's where everybody in my family is except me. I'm here with you guys. All right. Yeah, Chatham. Oh, Kathy's here. Hi, Kathy. Boat nerd. Up, Jennifer. Party in Stony Point then. Yeah, party in Stony Point. I love it. Hang on, I'm just gonna get caffeine here. So you guys might be interested to know that today's live stream, I'm using the Starlink Mini that I bought with the help of everyone here, and I'm doing a stress test right now to see how the live stream goes. So if everything goes well today, then I should be able to theoretically I should be able to live stream directly from the ship this time when I go out, which is going to be great. Jill's here. Hi, Jill. Absolutely love the painting. Which, over there. Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. I think that one actually came with the house when we bought it. I'm not sure where that one's from. Stress test. I'm watching the Leafs tonight too. Oh boy, I can't even watch hockey anymore. Hey everyone, no, everyone's just rolling in now. This is great. Looked up a Starlink at White Shoal Lighthouse this past summer. White Shoal Light. Yeah. Yeah. How was that? Did it go well up there at White Shoal Light? Because I'm probably going to be in that area this time. So I'm hoping that should turn this down a little bit. Lights are kind of glaring. Hi, Jody. Mary's here. Say hi to William for me there, Mary. Hope he's around too. Debbie's here. This is great. Oh, fantastic. So we're a little early. I don't really want to get started, but I know there's a lot of people from Ohio here. Is anyone in Ohio near the Lake Erie shoreline? Because I know over in Kingsville, the water level from the storm that went by has dropped down. It's quite a bit. So they have a huge amount of additional beach there over in Lake Erie, especially this western basin. Just wondering how it's affecting Ohio. Ohio's not quite in the middle, but almost in the middle. Oh, hi from Sarnia. You're on Ohio here, Great Lakes Connect. Yeah, have you seen the shoreline there on Lake Erie lately in the last day or two? I noticed it's Lake Erie's really dropped out a lot. I'm actually gonna I'm gonna talk about that a little bit today. The he says hi, got you on the big screen. William's great. I'm actually gonna talk about these water levels a little bit. There's a wind exposed. Yeah, that's what happens when these storms go through. A lot of things get unearthed. We go higher. I don't really get near the shoreline unless I'm working on board freighter. Yeah, I don't blame you. I know exactly what that's like. Working on a freighter, I generally don't need to see the water. I'm at home too. I worked with a guy when I worked for the Princess Cruise Line. There was a man there. He was Commodore at the time, Commodore Romano, and he was close to retirement. And him and I used to talk on occasion. He was really very nice man. I liked him a lot. And he'd been sailing since he was 18, and 40 something years he was sailing when I got to know him. And I asked him what he was going to do when he retired because he lived in Miami, Miami, Florida. I asked him what he was going to do when he retired, and he told me with a very straight face and very bluntly that he was moving to Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know if he ever did, but that's what he told me. He said he wanted to go somewhere where there's no water. Thankfully, I'm only a contractor that comes aboard, but winter I'm in the boiler room. Yeah, so you're lucky then, being in the boiler rooms in the winter. That's the thing about engineers. They get it okay in the winter because everything's still warm, but in the summer, oh my god, it is so hot in that engine room. Where are we gonna look? Controls we want. Great Lakes. I'm just trying to. I want to talk a little bit about the storm that went through and the water levels affecting Lake Erie. And I know you missed the summer, Tori. Summer's right around the corner. I mean, it's almost December already. Summer and here will be starting 3 months, so not long now. Ready for snow tomorrow. Yeah, 18 inches below norm here. You're on Ohio. Yeah, 18 inches below. Okay, yeah. What I'm trying to, I suppose we can get started now. It's 1800. So, I want to talk to you all a little bit about the what happened on Lake Erie. Well, everywhere on the Great Lakes, but especially Lake Erie is a bit special. Now, I've been out on the ship when something like this has happened. One of these seasons has gone by, and it blew. The wind blows all the water over to the other end of the lake. And I'm gonna show you what's happened this time, and I'm gonna show you what's happened the time that I was involved in it. So I'm just trying to pull up um, Lake Erie here on my iPad. Um, just turning my fine. So this is what I gotta do then. All right, Port Weller. 11 ships waiting to get in the canal. Yeah, they changed the rules for the canal this year. They changed. There's something with the I don't remember exactly now, but they changed something about the bridges and the wind. So the bridges would not go up in as much wind as they used to. The threshold for them going up is lower now. So that holds up ships over there as well. I missed the story. Oh, the story about Commodore Romano. Okay, I'll tell it again. So Commodore Romano was a man that I worked with on at Princess Cruise Lines. He was a very nice man. I met him 2013, 2014, or something like that. Anyway, Commodore Romano had been sailing since he was 18 years old. So he'd been sailing for 40 something years when I'd met him, and we used to talk on occasion. So one time when I was talking to him, I asked him what he was going to do when he was going to retire because he was retiring later that year, and he told me he was moving to Phoenix, Arizona. He lived in Miami at the time, but he was moving to the desert because he didn't want to see water anymore. So well, we were talking about, not there was somebody here saying they don't need to see the water unless they're working on the ship, and I get that, and that's what Commodore Romano told me. I always think of him. He's a very great man. Um, all right, so Tori, I didn't know you guys use Starlink on the helicopters. That's really interesting. Does it work well for you, Tori? The Starlink on the helicopters? Must. Already snowing here. Yeah, snow. I don't mind snow if we could do winter activities, but where I live, we don't get enough snow to really do anything. It just gets cold, so it's too cold to do summer sports, but it's uh, not enough snow to do winter sports, which kind of sucks. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm glad that Starlink works well. Yeah, so I'm testing mine for the ship. If this goes well tonight, then I know that I'm going to be able to live stream from on board. I imagine I should be going back next week sometime, so I'll be there for first week of December to early mid January. There's going to be some day that I get an anchor day in there somewhere. There has to be. The weather's not usually that nice. It's not as bad as now, but it won't be fantastic. So anyway, Lake Erie, I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I'll tell you a story about how I got to go home for Christmas while I was working on the boat. Snow doesn't bother me, it's the ice, nothing like skiing. Yeah, icy roof. Yeah, that sounds awful. That's like, out on the ship, the wind doesn't bother us too much. It's the waves that cause us the problems. So it's the byproduct of it. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this, but I haven't figured out how to share my screen yet. So I'm just going to do this. So I'm not sure if everyone can see that. This is the water level height in Toledo over the last few days. Can't see from the what do I got, the 20th to the 28th or something there. You can see that sharp drop. That's when the wind kicked up. So it went from what do I got over here? Went from about, what do we got? About 20 down to minus 40 inches. So that's 60 inches. It dropped about 5 feet. So that was this time. So that was a lot of water that got pushed by the wind from the western basin of Lake Erie into the eastern basin. So all that water, it didn't disappear. So what happened is it went over to the other side. So I'm going to see if I can open up another tab here with the Buffalo, because it all went to Buffalo. It always goes to Buffalo. The people in Buffalo get hammered every year by this, and it's awful. They if you watch some of the weather forecasts or like the weather apps, like I use Windy, and if you watch that, when the wind kicks up, Lake Erie creates this funnel where it takes all the humidity and everything on Lake Erie, and it pretty much all funnels right into Buffalo. So I'm gonna pull up Buffalo here, and I'll show you how the water didn't. It went from one side to the other in a very short interval. So I'm gonna set this one at the same. So I got the 20th to the 28th again. So you can see there, Toledo went down and Buffalo went up. And that's what happens. So it's like, we call it like the bathtub effect, right? So basically, like Erie, think of it like a big bathtub. And if you jump in the bathtub and start making waves, it just goes back and forth. And that's basically what's happening. Um, you can plan around it as best you can, but sometimes you just got to wait. You got to watch it, monitor it, and know what's happening. Um, oh boy, I'm missing a few things. Holy Toledo's Park. Sarnia water, yeah. So the water level is going to be down all over this side of Lake Erie because it's all getting pushed to the other end, getting sucked out. But in this instance, so we went from 20 up to 72 inches. So that's about 60 or so. So it's about 5 feet. So that's happened this week. Hang on, I better catch up on these comments here. Port Huron sound is being worked on. Yeah, the live camera. Tori was telling me that the live camera, the sound is out. I'm hoping they get it back soon. What's the shallowest port I've been to? I've been to Alpena. Alpena is shallow. Alpena is shallow, Kingsville is shallow. Those are 2 very shallow ports where um, you can't take a lot of risk there, because you're so close to the bottom. Um, back, when I was first mate, the captain, um, of the ship that I was on used to tell me if we weren't, dragging on the bottom going into Kingsville, we didn't load enough cargo. So, that's just I don't know, that's just a fun thing that I remember about Kingsville. If you're not on the bottom going into Kingsville, you're not making any money apparently. But Kingsville's so shallow. We used to go in there at like 17 feet, and the Cuyahoga's ballast draft was like I think it was right around 18, if I remember right. So it's not very deep, Kingsville. And the problem with Kingsville too is it's full of it's sand. It's Western Basin, right? Sand and mud. So when this wind kicks up, I'm going to get into this later. It'll fill in the channel, and then the channel's got to be dredged out again for ships to get in. So Kingsville is definitely one. Alpena is definitely another very shallow place that I've been. Alpena, I don't remember how deep it is. I think I planned the Algoma Buffalo's trips in there. I got off just before they started, so I planned the voyage with the drafts and everything, with the help of the naval architects and everybody at the office. They all pitched in on this one, which is not normal thing to do. But because Alpena is so shallow, they ran the numbers for us and basically gave us a, a loading condition that we would be able to safely satisfy, and the ship would be happy, and we'd be able to get into Alpena. I think that was around 16 and a half feet, if I remember correctly. So that Alpena's pretty shallow too. The funny thing about Alpena is, I think, well, to my knowledge, it's the only port that's only on the Great Lakes that you have to do a ballast exchange after you leave. There's some sort of invasive species there. I forget exactly what it is, but you have to do a ballast exchange on the way out. Um, Before you get too far out, there's a certain area. I'd have to look it up again, but I know it's there, and I don't remember anywhere else on the Great Lakes specifically where you have to do that. What do we got now? Captain Tuesday, Muskegon Mission. Hey, Muskegon! Yeah, I like Muskegon. I went there a few times on the Manitoulin last year. It's a nice little spot. Submarine going by is great too. They got a great Harley store there. I've heard. I haven't been there yet, but I'd very much like to. Herbert C. Jackson stuck here since Wednesday afternoon. Oh yeah. Well, Lake Michigan was a whole other thing. Yeah, it does affect the Detroit River as well. Oh, this guy. I'm having a conversation with somebody on TikTok. He's a very intelligent individual, and I know exactly what he's saying, but him and I are saying 2 different things, and he doesn't I don't think he understands that I'm talking about a different set of rules than he is. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. Um, Seems equal shifts. Yeah, well, the water's just Jamie, yeah, the water just goes from one end to the other, and it does affect the Detroit River. I'm gonna get into that. Yeah, the Pearson ran aground there, right where that CSL boat is. I don't know what happened, or what's going on there. It's strange to me. I think I know who the captain is over on the Pearson. I'm gonna see if I can talk to him one of these days. Yeah, I don't I they grounded close on the Detroit shoreline though, Chuck, so I'm not sure what happened there. It's all fine to point, um, fingers after the fact, but unless anyone's actually in the wheelhouse, you really don't know what's going on these ships, and I can attest to that firsthand from my experiences with the Cuyahoga and other nonsense I've been involved with over the years. So yeah, unless you're actually in the wheelhouse, it's really hard to tell what it is. Lake Lanier, Georgia. Hey, how we doing, Cheryl? This is great. Does Algoma let you put Xmas lights on? I don't know. This could be my first Christmas with Algoma. I guess we're gonna find out. Silverside, Hot Rod Harley division. Navigating ship harder at night during the day. I mean, Deborah, it's hard to say. The area has more to do with the difficulty to navigate. It's really easy to go at night across Lake Huron, but it's harder to go up the Saginaw River during the day. So areas are more or less challenging to navigate rather than um, um, night or daytime. Night presents its own challenges, just because you're not able to see maybe as much. Um, I know going into Perry Sound, I'd rather go into Perry Sound during the day than at night. The Perry Sound, the channel's kind of there's like an S bend in it, and the boys are all turned with the channel. So at one end or the other end, you're looking at this set of green and red boys that are all crossing each other and backwards and forwards. So that kind of thing makes it a little bit more difficult at night than during the day. But again, it's areas that are challenging day and night because we operate 24/7 all the time. Day and night's not really. I mean, it's a thing, but I wouldn't say one is more difficult than the other. I'd say areas present the challenges more than daytime and nighttime. Daytime, nighttime just adds to or takes away from. Keep hearing about chicken bone shoal in that area. Not sure if it's a real thing. Chicken bone shoal. Not sure I know that one. I don't know that one, Jamie. Chicken bone shoal. Over by Detroit, I think is what you're saying. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they're those two ships. They ran aground in pretty much the same place. I'm not sure what's going on there. Captain's Corner live stream. Yeah, wouldn't that be great if I could get sort of a podcast and I get different captains on? But the problem is most captains don't want to do things like this. They're very private individuals. Not to say that I'm not a private individual. It's just this sort of thing isn't up their alley, basically. Buffalo anchored off Alpena. Yeah, they'll be anchored off Alpena until the wind gets all right, Steve. Because like I said, they have to deballast to a shallow draft and then go in. Most tricky section of the Welland Canal to navigate, the end. The end is always the worst. And it doesn't matter which end it is, whether you're going upbound or downbound. But by the time I get to the other end, I'm usually pretty tired and have to really force myself to pay more attention. Really depends on the transit, but it's always the end that's the hardest because when you're tired, things get more difficult. And usually, when you get towards the end, you know you're getting close to sleep, so you want to cut the caffeine out so that you can sleep after you get through, right? So in the canal, it's always the end. The canal is pretty much the same all the way through. There's a couple places in the level where it's a little bit different at different stages, bit narrower, a bit wider, lopsided. But the end is always the hardest. It's the human factor in it that makes it difficult. Uh, but yeah, I hope that answers the question. William Crossing Strangers. Yeah, well, we'll see about the Christmas lights. I'm not. This is my first. I'll go with Christmas, so we'll see what happens. Cabbage. Yeah, there's my brother. Frank Todd is definitely my brother. Cabbage and cheese. Alpina had Christmas lights. Yeah, the Alpina is one of those classic Lakers. Anything going? I don't know of anything going to scrap at the end of the year. To be honest with you, I don't think Algoma's got anything going. I think they're quite happy with the tonnage that they have, and for the most part this year, it's all been busy. I don't think anything would be going. I know they got that. Now, this is secondhand information. They told me that the Tim S. Duel is in a repairable state, but they won't repair it unless the tonnage is needed and justifies the cost of the repair. So I don't even think that's going anywhere. I think that's just on standby in case they need it. But, oh, Pennsylvania. Shelly. Hi, Shelly. Are you about the average age of a Great Lakes freighter captain? No, no, I'm not. I am very young. I'm 36. I got promoted to captain at 30 years old, which was incredibly fast by whatever metric you want to measure it. The thing that's happening now is there's a lot of captains retiring quickly, and there's less and less people moving up to take over. So most of the captains that I know are at least 15 years older than me, most. There are some. A friend of mine, captain on the Endeavor, him and I went to college together. And then captain on the, I think he's on the Tavistock, Jesse. Jesse and I decked together on the Saginaw years ago. But yeah, I don't think I'm the average age. I think I will move into the average age as I get a little bit older here because people are. I saw it all going. Where they've just put a few people up to training captain positions, which is fantastic. But there's a lot of young people now because there was a really big gap um, in interest, and that's one of the reasons I started doing this social media thing is to kind of pique people's interest in it as a potential career path. You know, if people haven't been to the Welland Canal, worth to visit. Yeah, Walk 3 is good. They got a catwalk there. You can walk almost out to the edge of the ship. How long is the canal transit walk? Well, I did it in 8.5 hours this year, and I've done it in 18 hours this well, 17.5 hours. So depends on traffic. If I get a good run, I'll get through in 9 hours ish, usually little less than 10. If I get a decent one, if I get a really good run, it'll be closer to 8. But a lot of things got to work in your favor at that point. Um, but yeah, I'd say maybe average is 12 hours. I usually count for 12 hours through the canal. That's never usually too far off. Maritime traffic. Yeah, Mary, I've been teaching William about maritime traffic. Yeah, there's so many ships out there to watch. It's very interesting. Yeah, Cheryl, it was young, 36. Yeah, that's it, 36. Been captain for 6 years now. It's kind of crazy. I had enough wild things happen to me already. So there's no shortage of any experience one way or the other because I've seen a lot of it already. Not repeatedly, thankfully, but I've had fires, man overboards, failed equipment, failed engine, failed steering, failed everything. Everything's failed. That's why I always tell people when I'm training them, just count on everything to fail at any time, and then you'll never be surprised when it does, because it does eventually. If you spend enough time out on the water, eventually the radar is going to go. Eventually, the steering goes. Eventually, the engine goes. Eventually, you have a fire. Eventually, somebody falls over. It's the nature of the industry. Yeah, man overboard. Yeah, man overboard. We had one in when I was on a passenger ship in. We were where were we left Cabo. So we were in the Pacific coast of Mexico, and two passengers fell over their balcony in their stateroom. We had to go, excuse me, we had to go back and pick them up. Um, Luckily, they were in warm water, so everybody was okay. But yeah, people fall off the boat sometimes. I haven't had any man overboards on the Great Lakes yet. You know, knock on wood. But yeah, I've had pretty much everything happen. When's your last trip before layup? Yeah, I don't, Cheryl, I don't know yet. They don't tell me that kind of stuff until later on. I'll usually I usually find out early January, and then things change so often, so quickly, one way or the other. Um, yeah, it's fast. But you know, the scheduling for these things is it changes all the time. So I always tell people I don't know where I'm going until I get there, and that's just kind of how it works out. So at the end of the year, depending on what needs to get moved, they'll add on or take off trips quickly. So, and then as some of you know that have been following me for a little while, I could get stuck in the ice for 3 days outside of Buffalo again. Who knows? Um, so it's very dependent on weather and trips and all that. So I usually count on the 25th of January for the last one. Sometimes that's late. Sometimes that's early. I don't know. It depends on the year and it depends on the demand for cargo. If salt's in demand, then it'll be in demand. How hard is it going up the Saginaw River? Saginaw River is hard the first time, and it's hard the second time, and then it gets easier. I really like the Saginaw River now. I love going up there. It's great. Um, it's got a good mix of bridges and interesting ship handling going up there. I joke with people often. It's like the Saginaw River. Once you get past the bridges, it's like bowling with the gutter guards down because it's so soft up there. Even if you do run aground, and I've been on ships that have run aground up there. Even if you do run aground, it's all sand and mud. You just back off and carry on. It's great. People get bent out of shape because the hull touches the bottom, but these lakers, like we're halfway on the bottom almost everywhere we go. All these river docks we go to, um, Windsor, Detroit, Erie. Oh man, am I gonna name all these now? Erie, Perry Sound. Oh, and then all these Eastern Lake Michigan ports, Grand Haven, Manistee, Muskegon has got some. They all have these river ports, river docks where it's basically a bank with some securing points for the wires, and we use the punt to run the wires back and forth. We are on the bottom while we're unloading there. A lot of people don't realize that, but we are physically touching the bottom at most of these stone docks and some of the salt docks that we go to. But yeah, no, Saginaw River. I love the Saginaw River. I like all of them, like, Saginaw, Toledo, Buffalo, Chicago, Cleveland. All these places are great. They're fun to go to. So I look forward to seeing you on the St. Clair River. Yeah, I will be there on the St. Clair River. Hopefully this time back. I'm sure I'll have a few trips up and down. I like watching the tugs too. Tug buddy, do some videos. Yeah. Yeah. Who do I know? Nick does the tug in Buffalo. Nick's a good guy. I like Nick a lot. I don't know. He does post some stuff to social media too now and then. He's a good guy. I like Nick. Ice at Marine City was epic this year. Yeah, I remember. I went through there in January, icebreaker escort up and down. The ice all the way through the river. It was pretty open above Marine City, but yeah, good spots at layup. Yeah, there is only so many spots, but there's only so many Lakers too. The challenging part for layup, from what I've been told, is getting the right spot. So if you want a specific vendor or a specific team to have access to the ship, you want the ship to be in a specific area, and sometimes that team or service is in high demand that year, and then it's harder to get in. But usually the layup spots are planned out by now. I should find out when I get back where we're going to lay up. What's hard is when you have surprises happen. So the Kaministiquia had a delay years ago at Sorel, and they actually, rather than finding another layup spot, they left partly full of cargo. They didn't finish their unload, and they went back up to get their spot. In my experience, chasing boats around service equipment most of the time, if the service is needed, I'll find out I'm actually. Yeah, sometimes it's short notice. Sometimes things just break. Nobody knows that better than me. I've had a lot of things break on me this year. Ballast line. We had a rupture in the ballast line. We had some engine problems this year. We had some unloading gear problems this year. We had propeller problems this year. We had steering problems this year. It happens, and the company wants the problem to go away as quickly as possible, fixed, of course, and because they want the ship to continue running, especially during the season, because they only have a limited amount of time during the season to make the money before winter layup comes, and then it's maintenance mode, and then they're spending money. So they want to maximize their time underway with cargo, so that they're producing the maximum amount of money for that ship, which, uh, from a financial standpoint, makes perfect sense. So yeah, sometimes it's short calls, and I bet sometimes you get called out and you have to wait for 10 hours too. Sometimes because we're never early or on time. It's always late, and because reason for that is when I give an ETA to a contractor or something, I want them to be there when I get there. So I always give our best case scenario to the dock or the lock or wherever we're going to be, and then if we make the best case scenario, then they're there on time, which is fantastic. But it doesn't always happen that way, which is unfortunate. Steve, is the propeller fixed yet? To my knowledge, it's still the same. So what happened is during the summer, part of one of the propeller blades cracked off. I'm not sure what happened or what the reason is. If we hit anything, I have no idea. But it was only one, and one of the propeller blades lost a section at the end, and that caused the propeller to be unbalanced. So the unbalanced propeller caused the ship to wobble a little bit. Um, so there was because it's the Algoma Buffalo and the propeller blades are not, to my knowledge, they're not the original propeller blades that have been put on, and they couldn't track down the proper uh, design for the propeller blades, so they couldn't really get one made very quickly. So what they did is there's 4 propeller blades and one's damaged, so they went to the opposite one across the hub and they cut it down to match. So there's 2 shorter propeller blades and then 2 longer ones. So that's still the same as far as I know. I do think in the winter they're going to pull one of the completed ones and send it to have some more made. Maybe a Coast Guard cat. Oh, you guys want me to interview the Coast Guard, Debbie? I mean, I know a couple people in the Coast Guard. I could try that. They might be interested. Call my man Nick. Maybe Nick will want to see something. My man Nick is great. There's a lot of good Great Lakes tug operators. Nick is just one that I'm very familiar with from my time going in and out of Buffalo last year on the Manitoulin. The Corps engineers, future talk. Well, hey Chuck, I answer them back. I haven't heard any definitive plans yet, so that's kind of in limbo right now. Maybe I'll email them again next week and just see what's going on. Any status update on the press file? No, I have no idea what's going on with the press file. I think I've seen it out a few times this year. I know there's been a slowdown on the Great Lakes with tariffs and whatever governments doing whatever governments do. So there's been a lesser demand for cargo this year than there has been previous years, as I understand it. I just drive the boat. I don't really get into that part of it too much, but that's what I've been told by some of the traffic people I've been talking to. So no, sorry, Jill, I don't have any information on the press file. Yeah, Jamie, you'd be getting the same ships because ADM wants those ships with they have storage. We call them storage loads on them, so they lay up fully loaded or mostly loaded, and then as ADM requires the cargo, they will unload in the winter, and then they shuffle around. The last 2 3 years, I've been putting the Kaministiquia off ADM and putting it into the more term slip. Um, and that's a fun maneuver. You put the anchor down like Pirates of the Caribbean, and you kind of turn on it. It's kind of neat. What's it like being anchored out on Lake Huron when it's really windy? Tori, it is boring. Oh my god, it's so boring. For me, being an anchor, I don't like being an anchor. I like being on the move. Because when you're stopped, you're always worried about when you can get going again. So you're constantly in the state of looking at weather, looking at everything. When can I get going? When do I need to prepare for? When do I have to have the engines by? It's this constant waiting game. Um, so it's boring and it's tedious at the same time because I'm always thinking, okay, so if the wind goes down at this time, I need to have the engines for this time, and then you wait till the next forecast comes out, and if it's different, then you're like, okay, well there goes that plan. Now you need to make a new plan, um, which happens a lot. So boring and tedious being at anchor. That's basically how I feel when I'm out there. Interview the guy from that sailboat. I wish. Sailboat guy. I'd like to know, what exactly he was thinking when he was going through there. If he knew what the rules were, I'd be interested to know that. I don't want to blame him for anything. Like everything was fine coming out of it this end, but I'd be interested to talk to him. I think that'd be fun. Are there rules to when and where you can salute? No, there's no rules about saluting anywhere, as far as I'm aware. Captain's discretion. Some captains do it, some don't. Um, I usually don't on the Algoma Buffalo in the evening to mid morning because the forward whistle can be heard in the accommodation block, and it wakes some people up if they're sleeping. And sometimes people gotta work, and I don't want to have to disturb anybody. But if it's the middle of the day, most of the people are up. I usually go, but yeah, there's not really any rules to my knowledge about saluting anywhere. Um, Something that I like to do is there's a man that I know that lives near mile marker 13 in the canal. And if I'm there early in the morning, I will wake him up, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. I won't wake him up at 2 in the morning, but if it's, 7 in the morning, if I'm up, he's up kind of thing. Um, I don't think his neighbors like that at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they don't. But yeah, there's not really any rules about where when you can salute anchoring bad weather. What happens if his way or moves during the storm? Yeah, the Buffalo did lose an anchor. Again, I wasn't there, so I don't wanna speculate on what happened or anything because I wasn't there and I don't know. That's the truth. They did lose an anchor. So, when you're anchored for weather, usually try and find a spot that's sheltered, so the wind is coming off the land to you, rather than across the water. That means that the wave action is going to be less, and it usually means the wind will be less if you can get in behind the trees or the land or anything like that. If the anchor starts dragging, options are to let out more anchor chain. Sometimes that helps. Um, Also, something I've done, especially on these forward end boats like the Cuyahoga or the Manitoulin or things like that, because there's so much structure in the bow, the ship will start yawing back and forth because the wind will be blowing on the structure on the bow and the structure on the stern, and it'll cause it to yaw. So we do something called dropping underfoot. So you have one anchor out forward of the ship on a long lead, and then the other anchor you drop straight down so that it's just touching the bottom, and that dampens down the yawing motion because that one straight down is just stopping the bow from kind of going back and forth like this. That helps sometimes. First step is always put more chain out. After you put more chain out, you can drop underfoot. After you drop underfoot, maybe you have to consider that you didn't choose a very good anchoring position and you might have to go somewhere else to anchor. There are other factors like, what's the bottom made out of? Are you anchoring in rock or shale or mud or sand or, those things? But generally, that's like the steps if you're having problems while at anchor. The best thing to do is always find a good place to anchor. Every captain on the Great Lakes will have their own list of places that they go when there's weather, things that they do. Usually, anchoring is a full stop. We don't, we prefer to keep moving. So that's why you see some ships will do weather routing. So, for example, a north wind in Lake Superior, you'll see ships taking the north shore around. And that's because the wind or the wave action is not that bad the closer you are to the north shore, as it is across the middle. You definitely so let's say there's a north wind on Lake Huron. Wind's coming from the north, and you want to wait for the weather to get better before you go up to detour from the St. Clair River. You probably shouldn't anchor outside 11 and 12 because you have the wind running all the way across Lake Huron down towards the river. So the worst place to be is at 11 and 12 because that's where the wave heights are going to be the highest. and where the wind will be the strongest. Because you're at the end of the fetch is what we call it. It's the distance that it's the area of which the wind is blowing along is the fetch. Measured in when you make meters, kilometers, miles, whatever. Um, so you don't want to be at the end of the fetch, right? You want to be at the start of the fetch. So it'd be far better to be anchored in the North Channel if there was a north wind than there would be to anchor at 11 and 12. I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. You don't want to choosing the place is important. Sharon Prescott ran aground in St. Mary's River and dry dock in Erie, Pennsylvania. There's been a lot of groundings this year, hasn't there? There was another interlake boat that ran aground in the St. Mary's River. Forget which one that was. Um, Presque Isle, that CSL boat in Detroit, the Pearson in Detroit, the Manitoulin ran aground in the Seaway. There's been a lot of groundings this year. It's been a wild year this year. Boring, Shelley, boring, tedious can be stressful. Yeah, boring and tedious. Yeah, that's pretty much just that's what being at anchor is like because you want to be on the move. You know you're supposed to be on the move, but when do you get to go? Sometimes you know, sometimes you don't. Here, I'll vote for the Xmas lights. Yeah. Well, we'll see when I get back. We'll see what they have on board. They might have something set up when I get there. I've been to one and two. Yeah, one and two. Yeah, one and two would be. Oh my god, it gets bad on Lake Huron, especially that north wind. Like, well, everyone says Lake Superior is the worst. I mean, it can be, but any of the lakes can be particularly nasty. Like Lake Michigan, like if you get a south wind on Lake Michigan, like at the north end is just awful. I've been through that. I actually uh, learned my lesson on the Cuyahoga years ago, trying to get across to Green Bay in the south wind on Lake Michigan. I never do that again. Wasn't that you that scared the crap out of Duluth area aerial lift bridge with a sloop? Yeah, that well, if you're talking about the video that he put up and he said that he had to change his pants, yeah, that was me. The whistles on the Buffalo are loud. Make no mistake, they are loud. I know I did a short the other day. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I was talking about the whistles and how the bigger the ship, the lower the pitch. That's pitch, right? So that's like on a piano. So, small ships are at one end of the piano keyboard, and then big ships are at the other end of the piano keyboard. That's pitch. That doesn't account for loudness. Some whistles are way louder than others, and they all go, "Oh, Buffalo has really loud whistles." That aft whistle, they if I use the aft whistle, I actually scared myself with it because I was when I first got on, I was testing everything up in the wheelhouse, and I hit the button for the aft whistle, and I jumped because the whole wheelhouse shakes when I use the aft whistle. It shakes, vibrates like I'm sitting on a dryer. It's, kinda wild. Gotta go, wife is staying on, see you next time. Okay, Great Lakes fanatic, that's great. Yeah, Duluth aerial lift bridge operator, yeah. Yeah, that was me this year. Arthur M. Anderson laid up in Toledo. Interesting thing is the AIS thing. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. The Michipicoten has been having pings out on the West Coast too. The AIS is a weird system. I have no idea what's causing that. So AIS is actually ran through VHF. Um, there's a satellite component to it as well, and that's how marine traffic gets to it. But it's it's uh, it's mostly run through a VHF antenna, and that's why when we're on board, we can only pick up ships when they're X amount of miles away. So it depends on the height of the antenna and the atmospheric conditions of the day. So some days are better than others. The longest distance that I've acquired an AIS target was outside of. We were on our way to Dubai, and I think it was like 140 miles, and that's like ridiculous. Because most of the time when you pick up an AIS target, he's like 20 miles out because it's run through VHF. So if you're out of VHF range, you're out of AIS range. Usually, that's the general rule of thumb. One old master, right? Yeah. So the AIS, I don't know how marine traffic um, gets their information, but that's how we get it. And I think they have shore stations. There's a guy named Marty in Windsor. He's got one. I talk to him sometimes. He's a really nice person. Um, he's got a setup there where he has some sort of antenna and he hooks it up to the internet, and marine traffic pays him or something to receive information and send it to them on the lakes. Patricia, what's the length of my shift? As the captain, there is no real end. There is legal rest hours that I'm supposed to comply with. However, they all go out the window and there is extenuating circumstances. So basically on board and not on board. Um, there is a, there is minimum rest hour requirements is set out by the U.S. Coast Guard and Transport Canada. We use the Transport Canada ones because we're Canadian flag, so that's 6 hours in a 24-hour period and 16 hours in a 48-hour period. And not less than 6 hours can elapse between rest periods, the end of one rest period and start of the other. So I can't get up and work for an hour and then take another 6 hour rest period. I have to have 6 hours has to pass before I can have my next rest period. But extenuating circumstances always is a thing. So safety of the ship, safety of the crew. If anybody ever needs anything, basically just call me. I don't work like a watch in the wheelhouse anymore. That stopped when I was first mate. So the mates do 4 hours on, 8 hours off in the wheelhouse. And then they do overtime and other things outside of that. But as for like a shift, like some days I work like, it's Monday, I could work all day Monday, and then I could take a 6 hour rest period, and then I could work, you know, all night Tuesday, and could go back and forth as much as it wants. Um, do I prefer so yeah, there's minimum rest hours I'm supposed to comply with. I don't exactly have a shift, and yeah, I hope that answers the question there. It's really hard to describe. I just pretty much work when I get on the boat. Um, I do take my rest hours and I log them, but you know, things happen. Things break. Something breaks, I get called. We had loss of steering. We lost. We had engine problems. We had the ballast line go. We had problems with cargo. Like all that stuff. I get called. So if I'm in the middle of my rest period, I just get called anyway. That's kind of just how it works. Do I prefer to stay at the helm in poor conditions? I'm usually in the wheelhouse when um, it's navigationally sensitive. So like rivers and I have to be in there for the locks and whatever. But if I have a qualified person for the Detroit or St. Clair River or the St. Mary's, I'll let them do it, and I'll go do whatever I have to do. But in the rivers, I'm in the wheelhouse. Arriving, departing from a port, I'm in the wheelhouse. Canal, all that stuff. If it's foggy, the guys will call me, and I'll go up and I'll assess the traffic and everything. If there's not a lot of ships around, they're just following the red dotted line anyway. Um, I check to make when they call me, I check to make sure the radars are tuned correctly and they have them on, which they do. But I always check to make sure the equipment is working properly before I go back down. I won't sit in the wheelhouse if it's foggy. Like if there's no one around and it's foggy, that's fine. Um, they've called me, I've assessed the situation, and then I just kind of leave them to it because that's their job too. They're supposed to be navigators. Um, the more that I do for them, the less that they're going to do for themselves. So I've seen this before where captains they don't like letting go of control. Um, and so what happens is you get these mates that come up as they get their time, they write their exams and they come up through the ranks and they're not I don't want to say not as confident, but they're not as capable because they haven't been given the opportunity to learn to be capable. And I try not to take that away from them. I'll never sacrifice, safety of the ship or anybody on board, but I try to give them the chance to rise to the occasion as much as I can. So, I'm not always up at the helm, if bad conditions. If it's a surprising condition, like I had on the Cuyahoga going across northern Lake Michigan, yeah, I'll be in the wheelhouse. We had like 12 or 15 footers and we're loaded trying to get over to Green Bay in December, and that was god awful. Um, so yeah, if it's really bad, I'll go up there and I'll hang around, but, there's a certain level that I'll do that for. Oh my god, I gotta catch up here. Mark W. Barker aground from yeah, the Mark W. Barker ran aground at Belle Isle there years ago. It's still on Google Earth. Oh my god. Can you imagine being that captain and his mistake or whatever? Maybe it wasn't his mistake. Maybe it was an engine failure. Maybe it was completely beyond his control. And it's still there on Google Earth. And every time somebody goes to look at Belle Isle, the Barker's there. That'd be awful, wouldn't it? Overstar Interlake boat. Oh, the Overstar. Thanks, Jill. Yeah, the Overstar. Yes, she's back out on the water, but she was in, I want to say, Superior Dry Dock there for a little while. Homemade houseboat. Yeah, no, Tori sent me that homemade houseboat. I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, good on them for building it, but I don't know how seaworthy it is, right? But then again, maybe it's ridiculously seaworthy. I have no idea how they built it, but it looked like they had sliding doors from a house on the front of it. Yeah. You attribute the numerous groundings to the low lake levels. I can't talk for all of them. The ones that I do know about what happened in the wheelhouse, no. Um, I know one of them for sure. Was human error, and that happens sometimes, and it sucks when it happens because these kind of things they stick with you. One of the guys that trained me, he always told me, when I was making my decision whether I was going to go into a port or go around and abort, he always told me, no one will ever know how many times you abort a port or you go around to try again. Everybody's going to know the second you hit something, which is true, right? So any one of these ships, anything happens, like the slightest little incident, usually it's all over everywhere. It's over the internet and everything, and it's really it's a hard thing to do or to have put in your face all the time. I know people they like hearing about ships and what's happening, and oh, did you see the ship ran aground? It's interesting information to know, and it's newsworthy and that. But the captain on there, he's getting 30 phone calls from people saying, what the heck did you do, right? But yeah, it's not fun. But no, it's not all low water levels that are causing these groundings. It could be human error or mechanical error or mechanical failures. It could be lots of things. I had a steering issue out on Lake Erie. If it happened in the river, I would have ran aground. The rudder got stuck 20 degrees to starboard. That's what happened. Um, I got it into Port Colborne safely. We had until um, arrival Green Bay. So the video coming out tomorrow on Saturday. You'll hear me talking to the wheelsman about a slow rudder response, and that's the second time we noticed it. So the second time, the engineers actually found an issue with the pump, and then they fixed it. So that's great. It's a lot less comforting when you have an error like the rudder getting stuck 20 degrees to starboard, and no one can find a problem because is it fixed? I don't know. Maybe. Hope so. But yeah, we didn't have another problem for months, so or weeks until then. So hopefully we got it all sorted out now. The houseboat, yeah, Cheryl, yeah, I don't even know what to say about that houseboat. I really don't. William says, "Thank you for question. Thanks for answering his question." Yeah, no problem, William. He was doing some reading, and when the watch. And watch the can blue. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what happened. The Buffalo did lose an anchor there. They got it back. It's reattached now, so everything's good. Yeah, I'm trying to organize because Vibe with Mike um, in Duluth. He's got a decibel meter, I think, and he measures the loudness of the whistle. So I'd be interested to see what he gets from the canal wall there. So I'd like to do that. Yeah, I could get one. Maybe I should get one of those decibel meters on my phone just to see how loud it is. It's loud. It's Kelly. It scared the I jumped when I hit the button. Houseboat finally made it to Lexington, Michigan. Oh, thanks, Chuck. So he's good now. He made it to Lexington. That's great. Any favorite ports that you like before sailing it out of? I don't know if I got a favorite. I like the Eastern Lake Michigan ones just because they're kind of fun. So that's like your Grand Haven, Livingston, Muskegon, Holland. I like Holland. Um, Chicago's fun. Toledo, Saginaw. I like going up the river in Saginaw. I always have a good time there. The bridge operators there in Saginaw are fantastic. The people there that operate the bridges, they're great. There's a guy that runs the Independence Bridge, which is the first road bridge as you're making your way up, and he will tell me the score of Michigan State University uh, from when I get into the river all the way up to the dock. So if he's watching a game or something, he'll just he'll just keep telling me, "Hey, yeah, I'm going with Buffalo. The score is this." That's great. But yeah, I like a lot of them. I don't think I got a favorite. Um, I just like the ship handling aspect of it. I used to work internationally, and there's not a lot of ship handling out there internationally. It's all done by pilots and that. So I actually get to drive the ship that I'm captain of, which is a lot of fun. And it keeps me interested, and it's what I like to do. But yeah, I don't really have a favorite one. I don't have a one that I don't really like. Well, I can tell you I don't like the way the bridges are set up in St. Joseph, and that's about it. There's a man there in St. Joseph. I forget what his name is now. He's really great. I like going in there and talking to him. I think his name's John or Mike. I forget now. Shoot, I'm gonna be embarrassed here soon. Anyway, great dude. He's the harbor master. I really like talking to him. But the bridges there, when you go in, you kind of got to stop and then shift the boat sideways and then continue going. And I think they got motion sensors on the rail bridge now. So if you even like glance it a little bit, they call you and they give you all kinds of grief, and that's annoying. But that's it. It's those two bridges there I don't like. Apart from that, I think Joseph isn't a bad spot. I do like what's his name now? Yeah. But I like the harbor master there. Great guy. I really like him. Hello from Sault Ste. Marie. Ah, Sault Ste. Marie. Which side of the border you on? Canadian or the U.S. side? I haven't never docked in the U.S. side, but I've been through the locks there. Well, obviously, many, many, many times. Tory flew over a lot of anchor boats in Lake Huron. They were there for days. Yeah. The winds are not great, Tory. Everybody's pretty much stopping. So it kind of sucks, but it's the right call for him. The wave action is on these old boats, which most Lakers are like. There's Oklahoma's got new ones, CSL's got new ones, but these old boats um, with generations of steel in them. So you have steel. Some of them have steel from the '70s and the '90s and early 2000s. Cuyahoga had steel from 1943. I think she was built all the way up to when I got off it a few years ago. Um, just the different grades of steel and locking and stresses. It's you never really know for sure. So it's always better to just stay away from those kinds of things, right? So if you think of um, decision making in terms of damages, so it's far better to lose 6, 12, 24 hours than it is to cause any damage that needs to be repaired. Um, if you cause any damage, there's lost revenue from the cargo you're not carrying. There's lost time, which is the worst part. So now your obligations under contracts could potentially be strained if you have enough lost time, which is also a bad thing. You're paying for fuel the whole time. You have to pay for the repair, potentially have to pay for damages. By the time you factor in all that, you're half a million, $1 million sometimes. Well, it's not uncommon to be at that price range when it comes to ships and that. So if you, let's say a ship costs $2,000 an hour to operate. If you lose a day, you're out $48,000. If you do damage because you're trying to rush in, it's 10 times that potentially. So it's not the decision to wait and to wait for conditions to get better, even if you're waiting for a little while, is always the right call rather than to try and push something and see maybe if you can do something. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how I do decision making. A lot of time is cost benefit analysis. Most of the time, it's just wait. That's what I do. Wait till it gets better. Um, what do we got? Cheryl, how many mates are there on board usually? So we have three watchkeeping mates doing 4 hours on, 8 hours off. The engine room has the same system, so they have the second, third, and fourth engineer. So they have three engineers down there doing 3 hours on and 4 hours on and 8 hours off. And they go like that all year round. As soon as we're offshore power, the engineers are on watch. Well, they're usually on watch before, but yeah. And then the mates, they're on watch all the time when they're on board. Watching you back out of Toronto was awesome. Yeah, that was kind of a dare, Tori. I think we were talking about this before. So I talk to a lot of captains. When I haven't been somewhere in a while, I'll call somebody who's been in there recently. I hadn't been in Toronto since I was the first mate, so this is the first. Well, the time I backed out. That was the second time I was in there. So the first time I was in there was like a week before, and I was calling some people and getting some advice. What do I need to look out for? What should I do? What should I stay away from doing? And all this stuff. So I went in and everything was fine. Went in, turned around at the basin, or we went in, unloaded, turned around, and came back out. Everything was fine. And then I was talking to somebody about it, another captain, and he said, "Well, did you back out of the bridge?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you should try backing out." I said, "Are we allowed to back out?" He's like, "Well, maybe." So while I was in there, I talked to the bridge operator. They were a really great guy. They were very punctual there. So we were there outside of the regular working hours, and they were there. I didn't have to wait for them, which was fantastic. Sometimes if you're approaching a bridge outside of regular working hours, things don't always go very smoothly. You might have to wait for a little bit, but these guys were on the ball. It was fantastic. So I was talking to them, and I asked him. I said, "Do you mind if I back out rather than head out?" We were gonna leave in the day, and it wasn't really windy, so the conditions were good. He's like, "Oh yeah, no problem." So yeah, I back straight out. Never done that before, but that was kind of neat. That was fun. So it was almost like wasn't really a dare, but one of the other cabins said, "Oh yeah, you should try it," and then I did. Is seasickness in rough weather an issue? Is everyone adapt to the movement? Some people get seasick, and that's just it. Some people don't. I got seasick really, really badly one time on the Saginaw, and I remember exactly where we were on Lake Superior. We're going into Marquette um, to load some more for the Sioux, and the wind was out of the north, and the captain was going. I was steering, and I was so sick. This is back when the Saginaw had an older steering system. So there was when you turn the wheel, it would click into notches rather than just being free flowing like a car steering wheel. So you would click for five, and then I think it was 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and then 35 or something like that. Anyway, I forget exactly, but it would click over. And so I'm trying to steer the Saginaw, this being my first time out on a ship pretty much ever. And I remember looking out of the window right abeam of the steering stand, and it would be all sky, and then it'd be all water. And after we got in, I went down and I was very sick. After that, I was never seasick again. But some people, they just get seasick. Some people it doesn't go away. I've had people come up to me and tell me or ask me that if we're going to be going into weather to let them know, and then they would so that they could take whatever pill they had with them to take to prevent them from throwing up. Um, but yeah, some people get sick and some people don't. I've heard different things about seasickness. Some people have told me that it's like if you get seasick, there's something in your body that's operating correctly, and if you don't get seasick, it's operating incorrect. I don't know what it is. I'm not super up onto that, but yeah, some people get sick, some people don't. And yes, we do have a few people that get seasick out on these ships. I have people on my boat that can't swim. I found that out last time I was there. One of the wheelsmen came up to me. He's like, "Yeah, if anything ever happens, I can't swim." But you work on a boat, right? Anyway, but yeah, he's getting close to retirement, can't swim, or that's what he told me anyway. American Century woke up the house where it's St. Report. Yeah, some of these whistles are very, very loud. Yeah, I like the old Lakers too. I've been on the old ones most of my career on the Great Lakes. When I was on the Pearson and the Mississauga and the Cuyahoga. I did time on the Saginaw. I did some time on the Pearson and some time on the Cam. Cam's not really a Laker though. She was built in Scotland whenever, 80s I think. But yeah, the old Lakers are great. You won't see any built like that anymore. The Ford wheelhouses. It's not cost beneficial because essentially you have two living spaces rather than just one. So on the Cuyahoga, double. We had to have two septic systems. We had to have two water heaters. We had to have two completely separate ventilation units, air conditioners, um, and all that kind of stuff. So you won't. It doesn't make financial sense to really do it anymore. Why they did it back then, I don't know, but that's pretty much why you won't see that anymore is because you're essentially doubling the initial cost because you're having to buy two of well, not everything, but most things, and then the maintenance costs are also higher because now you're maintaining twice as many systems. Whereas if you have everything back in one vertical block, you have one a water treatment system, one water heater, you have one ventilation system. It may be bigger, but there's still only one. So you won't see that too much anymore. So I'm really happy I got the chance to work on these ships, Cuyahoga especially. I love my time on the Cuyahoga. Um, but I don't see them coming back unless some billionaire gets the idea that he wants to see old Lakers again. But that is what it is. Can you talk about your time sailing internationally, Mark? Of course I can. Mark, let me know if there's anything specifically you want me to talk about, because I've been just about everywhere you can go on a ship internationally. I worked for a cruise line for 2010 to 2016. So what is that? 7 years, 6.5, 7 years, something like that. I've been a lot of places. I've seen a lot of things, seen a lot of cultures, seen a lot of not great things. Um, if you've ever wondered if passenger ships leave passengers behind, yeah, we do. Um, so there's did I captain internationally? No, I was cadet, third mate, second mate, and then I came back to the lakes as first mate, and then I got promoted to captain at 30. 20 2020, December 2020, I got promoted to captain. So I wasn't captain internationally, but I was mate internationally. I went a lot of places, saw a lot of things. Um, it was great. I like my time internationally, but there's for a Canadian where the tax system and all passenger ships internationally. For Canadian, where the tax system follows you everywhere, it's not great because a lot of these international companies, they base their wages off of the countries that have, taxes tax exemptions for people leaving the country for more than 180 days a year, which is a lot of countries except for the 2 countries in North America. So that's a thing. So they'd all be making, X amount of money, and I'd be making X minus my taxes. So that was yeah, he does request Mike. Yeah, Mike. Yeah, I'm gonna get Mike to do the decibel test one of these days when I get in there. Hoping I get in there soon. Wow, not being able to swim. Yeah, and there's more than just him that can't swim. I've come across a few guys that haven't been able to swim, so, that's a thing on a laker, can't swim, weird. Yeah, Mary, the forward wheelhouse thing, it's cost intensive, I've seen it. It's kinda wild. You done sailing for the year? No, I'm not done sailing for the year. I'm going to be going back, I think, next week. I was talking to my relief there earlier this week, and, he's planning a departure from the Algoma Buffalo middle next week. We have yet to confirm it, so I'm hoping to confirm it over the weekend with him, and then, I'll go back. So Mark, yeah, no, I didn't captain internationally. I was, 2nd and 3rd mate, and I did some cadet time, all on passenger ships. I worked for Princess Cruise Lines for a long time. The cruise line was great. People there were a bit of a pain, um, but I didn't have one complaint when it came to the company. Like, yes, I was a number, right? But when you Carnival Corporation, when you got thousands of people working for you, like thousands and thousands, like the passenger ships I worked on, there was 1,300 crew members, 1,300. Um, so I get that I was a number, but I didn't have any complaints. They trained me well. They always put me up in courses and made sure I had everything I needed to do. And um, I didn't, while I was there in my capacity, I didn't notice any maintenance problems. If anything was ever broken, it was always looked at, as quickly as possible. So I didn't. There was none of this. Oh, can you just hang on for a few more days or make it to layup or whatever? No, it got fixed. Now there were problems, but it wasn't from the company. It was from the people on board. So if you go back through the years, um, there have been people having incidents on passenger ships forever. There has been lifeboats that weren't reattached properly to the falls, and they swung on one cable, and people have died. There have been uh, um, environmental catastrophes. Um, I was on board for one, but I'm not. I'm not going to talk about that one because I really shouldn't sign papers and stuff. But yeah, things have happened, and it's never been from what I could see the company. It was always people on board that were the issue, and that's why when people ask me about my job, what the hardest part of my job is, it's managing the people. Now I work with a lot of really great people on the Algoma Buffalo. There are some relief people that come through that are a little bit more difficult to manage, but the hardest part of my job is getting everybody on board to work towards the common goal of the safe, efficient transport of cargo. Um, so yeah, my time on passenger ships was actually really great. I saw a lot of places, and I don't really have a lot of complaints other than the pay was terrible. Um, I'm pretty sure I could have made the same amount of money being a manager at McDonald's as I could driving a passenger ship with 3,000 crew and 1,300 or 1,300 crew and 3,000 passengers. That's the truth. Uh, Decorated one of our items like troll light, Wilfred Sykes frequent. Yeah, Wilfred Sykes. Yeah, I like the Wilfred Sykes. Wilfred Sykes is a good looking boat. Um, I tell them that sometimes when I see them, and they always tell me that it looks great on the outside, but it doesn't really run that well. I guess they got maintenance issues on older equipment or something. I don't know what's going on over there. But yeah, no, I do like the Sykes. Cuyahoga. I would have spent the rest of my career on the Cuyahoga. I love that boat. It was full of asbestos. Half the st half the stuff on the boat worked half the time. Um, but I had good people there, and, well, prime example that half the stuff worked half the time. Go back and, if any of you haven't seen the video I did on the TSB report of the Cuyahoga fire, go watch that, and you'll know exactly what I mean when I say half the things worked half the time. And it's just because it was old and full of asbestos. Yeah, I like to sail but never go in. Yeah, that's probably a good call. I did a video recently where I talked about a near miss that I had on the Cuyahoga with a sailing boat. Um, if you follow the rules, there's no problem. But the problem is, a lot of people, I think, they don't exactly know what the rules are. And if you don't know what the rules are, you can't follow them because, of course, you don't know what they are. But that's I don't. I think that's the fault in the licensing system that we have. I know on the Canadian side, it doesn't really dive into the um, collision regulations too much, but it should. And that's why a lot of people think, all power-driven vessels have to give way to sailboats all the time, and that's absolutely not the case. There are conditions where a sailing vessel has to give way to a power-driven vessel, and if you don't know what they are, probably should look it up if you're going to operate a sail vessel or a sailing vessel where there's power-driven vessels. Um, but I think it's the problem with the licensing system. I think they should be a little bit more uh, involved in that specific portion, like the rules that shipping follows. But yeah, it's okay if you just you stay to your side and keep out of the way. It's really not that bad. Chuck, I like the Maxima from the wagon board line. Board pilot. Yes, I saw that. That's actually a smart design for the wagon boards are a little bit smaller, but that's actually a smart design to have it up there because you can't like these container ships. The old container ships they used to put all in containers in front of them, right? Because that's the way ships work. And then you've noticed on some of the bigger ones now they put the wheelhouse or the accommodation a little bit more forward, so you have better visibility because you can't see down in front of the ship if you're full of containers. And that's the same for them. The wagon board ships, they deliver a lot of, general cargo, and, they can't see down, so if they put the wheelhouse at the front and everything up at the front, then, you know, it's great for them because the visibility is better, it's safer, because they can see down. But, yeah, Lakers, maybe they'll change, maybe they'll just put the wheelhouse forward like the wagon board boat, the Maxima, like you said there, Chuck. It's possible. Ship design is always evolving. It's not fair to say something's never going to happen again. Um, but I don't think you'll see Lakers adopt the forward and aft accommodations anymore. It could be a forward like the Maxima, but it'll be one. I think just cost wise, right? Because the bean counter's got to be happy too, right? Um, Companies are out here to make money, and that's what these ships are for. They're for producing income. Unfortunately, but that's what it is. Favorite and least favorite part about working on a ship? I like being the captain. I mean, who wouldn't? But, I do enjoy being able to make decisions and not have to worry too much about what other people think about those decisions. And to put that in a clearer light, when I was first mate, I was in charge of loading the ship, but I was always in charge of loading the ship the way the captain wanted the ship loaded, right? And different captains would want different things. Some captains didn't mind if the ship was down by the head a little bit. Some captains always wanted the ship to be trimmed by the stern. So I was in charge of loading the boat the way the captain wanted it, which could be stressful sometimes, especially if you have a captain that's maybe not very uh, um, doesn't really communicate to you what they want or how they want things to be done. Just expect you to know, and then when you don't do what they want you to do, even though they didn't tell you, you get in trouble for it. So that kind of stuff. But being the captain now, yeah, it's more responsibility, but I know I'm not it's gonna be for my decisions. It's not gonna be for someone else's decision. Um, I'll tell people on the boat, I'm always open to input, but it's my decision, and I'm not going to jail for somebody else's decision. It's whenever I make a decision about something, it's what I believe is the best course of action for whatever it is that we're doing. So it's far less stressful being captain than it is first mate or any of the mates because you're always worried. When I was a mate, I was always worried about what the captain wanted and trying to work within his specific um, area of comfort, I guess. But yeah, I like being captain. My favorite part about it would be the piloting. I think um, I like. I just like driving the boat. That's just fun for me. But that's maybe 10% of my job now. Most of it's all paperwork and legal stuff. And you hear me talk about rules and regulations all the time because that's my life. We got to stay compliant with the regulations. We have audits. We have internal audits within the company to make sure we're following company policies and rules. So we have that. We also have internal audits. Company personal account, make sure we're following Transport Canada um, regulation. And then we have external audits where we get Transport Canada to come down and do an audit to make sure that we're following all the Transport Canada rules. And then ABS will come down, which is Goma Buffalo's class, and they'll come down and do an audit, make sure everything's up to code. The railings are the right height, and all the equipment's working the way it's supposed to, and we have the right certificates, and nothing's expired. Um, so 10% of my job is the fun part, 90% is the less fun part, but the ship handling makes it all worth it because I just love that part. Rivers, docks, locks, canals. That's part of it. Worst part is I'm not home. That's it. Um, so there have been times where I've got a call from home. Well, this past summer, say toilet started leaking. I can fix the toilet, but I can't fix it if I'm on the boat. So having to um, be away and not being able to help, like that helpless feeling, that's the worst part. Being away from everybody is whenever I think that being away from everybody or being away from the family is bad. Um, I always go and I count how many days I worked that year, and then I count how many days I would have worked if I had a regular 9 to 5 job. And it's always a lot less days worked on the ship than a 9 to 5 job. But those days that I work are always in large chunks. So I just did 7 weeks, I think, but I've been home for a month now, which is great. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I don't really want to go be like a GLPA pilot at this stage of my career because I'm really enjoying having a whole month off. They don't really get that, and that's something that I enjoy. So yeah, that's the best parts and the worst parts. Um, Mark, really appreciate your videos inside the Great Lakes Shipping. Well, thanks, Mark. I am trying to shine a light on it a little bit because I get a lot of I talk to a lot of people, even in the Windsor area, and they say, "Oh, Tim, what do you do for work?" I said, "Well, I work on a ship." They said, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that." Well, you live in Windsor, right? You see the ships going up and down the river. You don't think anybody drives those? But yeah, I'm hoping to shine a light on it. We are having a labor shortage in Canada as far as people coming out to work on the ships. I think there's a labor shortage pretty much everywhere in Canada for everything, but we're noticing it more and more on the lakes. And I think a lot of it is because people don't know that this is a career path. Like it's hard some days. There's a lot of hard days out here on the water. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. There's really, really crummy days, but there's a lot of great days too. And sometimes it gets to be worth it. You start getting those months off at a time. I don't know if I could go back to a regular shore job anymore because I'm so ingrained into this. Work for a little bit and then have a little while off. Um, but yeah, I'm really trying to shine a light on it, Mark. And I hope that, some people are not inspired, but maybe they consider it as a career path or, something that they could do or, something they might like to try or something like that because, we need people to do it. If we don't get people doing it, then it's gonna be gone, and I don't want it to be gone because I enjoy doing it still. I enjoy working on the ships and doing what I do, and, um, there's hard days. There's really hard days, but there's also a lot of good days, and there's a lot of good things that come from it too. Ah, Jamie, have you worked with Todd that one? No, I have not worked with Todd yet. I think Todd, um, I think Todd is on the leash. I don't know. I'll come across Todd eventually. I don't plan on leaving Algona anytime soon or at all. The whole reason I came to Algona over Lower Lakes is because they had boats, and Lower Lakes is running out of boats. So yeah, this is it's a good spot. They treat me well. I don't have any complaints. Um, I don't have any complaints at all actually about them. They're treating me very well here. It's really good. And fellow Windsorite Sailor Seth. I think that Sailor Seth's significant other works with me on the Buffalo. I'm pretty sure it's either his girlfriend or his whatever. She works with me on the Buffalo. She's a great person too. I like her a lot. Um, yeah, Sailor Seth. You learn the rules of sailing in ground school. Yes, maybe it's changed since I've done it because I have a pleasure craft license as well, and I don't recall them ever getting into constrained by draft, but that could be my memory being faulty and not the actual truth about that, Cheryl. Cheryl, are you in Canada or in the US? Because I'm interested to know if this is a US thing that they're doing and that they're not doing in Canada, because that could very well be too. Big heavy lift boats, forward wheelhouse too. So yes, some boats do have the forward wheelhouse, but it's a design characteristic that's demanded by the type of work the ship is doing. For Lakers can get by with just one accommodation block. So some of them can, some of them can't. So you'll see there's a lot of different ship designs. A lot of ships are built specifically for one purpose, and to suit that purpose, um, they would have something like that. But for Lakers, I don't see the traditional Laker style coming back unless there's some big change that forces it into play because the more cost effective option is to have a single accommodation block, usually back aft, because the engines and it's above the engine space because that's lost area. So you can put the accommodation block there and that's all fine. If you put it up forward, then you have to have all that stuff up forward and that takes up cargo space up forward. I know weight on a ship is weight on a ship. No matter where you put it, that midship draft goes down. Okay, but when you start doubling up equipment and everything like that, there has to be a good reason for it, and that's why you'll see some ships like Chuck pointed out the Maxima, I think the PVC ship, or I'm sorry, Chuck, I don't remember now, but having everything up forward, that's still one accommodation block and it's up forward. Um, so it depends on what the demands are. I'm not a naval architect. I can't get into that. That's not something that's within my wheelhouse. Um, but I know from my time on the Cuyahoga versus Manitoulin and other aft end boats, the cost for maintenance is higher. And if they can get the cost down, then that's something that they're going to do because lower cost, higher profits, and that's keep it. Kathy, it's good to be the captain. It sure is. Cheryl, even on the small boat, good to be captain no matter where you are. If you're the captain, it's great. Forward wheelhouse vastly different than one on the back. Yes, one of the big things is that if you are forward wheelhouse, I talked about this in the sailboat video. The vector that's produced on the Ectus is uh, more usable while going ahead. and less usable going astern. So I talked about pivot points. I've talked about this a few times. So when a ship moves through the water, sorry, the pivot point will move from the center of the boat towards the forward end, and then it pivots around like that. So if you have the GPS and everything up forward, when you're going ahead, the vector will actually point where the bow is going, right? Because it'll be pointing down or up, depending on which way the bow is going. If you have an aft wheelhouse with the GPS unit back there, it's pointing where the stern's going. So you may be turning to port, but your vector will be going off to starboard. So that's something you need to be aware of. And when you're doing ship handling in tight spots, that vector is very helpful to give you an idea on which way the bow is going and if you have enough rotation on to make it into a turn. Um, that's You'll see in some of the videos that I put uh, Richard, I TV been watching for a while. Tori told me that you. Thanks, Richard. I appreciate that. Um, so for those of you that seen when I put the ectus on the screen, there'll be the predictor. That predictor will show rotation of the ship. It's a good representation of it. It's not perfect by any means, but it is a very good representation of the rotation of the ship. And I use that a lot for judging turns if I'm going to make it into gaps, so break walls or into slips or anything like that. I'll use that a lot to kind of give me a idea whether I have enough rotation on the ship or not to get it in. So that's helpful. But that's the big difference is the vector. Um, I prefer a forward wheelhouse when I'm backing into places because I can watch the whole ship. Whereas in an aft wheelhouse configuration, if I'm backing into something, there's only about, you know, 80 feet for me to make a judgment call in while I'm watching where the ship's going. And then the other, you know, 500 feet of ship or whatever is on the other end. So, yeah, so there's good and bad things to both sides of a forward wheelhouse and an aft wheelhouse. And I can't really pick which one that I like better. I find the benefits to both, and I don't really have a real big downside to either, if that makes any sense. So for me, forward wheelhouse, after wheelhouse is they're both great. It just depends on what the boat demands. Tori, love the music. Thank you, Tori. The music's coming back when I get on the boat. The music will be coming back for sure. I know you always have a little bit of input, and I appreciate that, and I'll work it in for you wherever I can. Are there many women captains or mates? Well, I know some. There's not many. Sailing is still a pretty male dominant profession. That's not to say women can't succeed. I know a lot of really great women out on the water. Most of the women that I know don't make it all the way up to captain. They have certain life goals, whether that's children or family or whatever it is. Big ones are, usually children, and they usually stop sailing. Some make it up. Captain Munden on the what boat's she on? Guardian. She's great. I've met her a few times. Fantastic woman. I like her a lot, and she's very good. Um, I've had a few female mates that I've worked with, but you could say the same about any of the women that you could the men, right? Some of them are really fantastic, really competent, excellent at their job. Others, not great. I can say that about every man too. It doesn't matter man or woman. Working out on a boat, but less women stick with it than the men do. For whatever reason, that's their life, their decision. But that's just what it is. But I've worked with a lot of great people on both sides of the gender scale. There's just less. I don't know why there's less. Less that start. Don't know. Maybe they don't know. Maybe it's not interesting to them. No idea. But yeah, there's a few women captains that I met around. Even internationally, I've worked with a lot of women. Women do face more challenges, um, than men do working on them, and the challenge is the men. I'm sorry to say it that way, but it is. Um, I have, since I've been captain, I've had a few um, women working as part of my crew, and I see it firsthand, and I've had to step in a few times, and it's not great. Um, but it's not something that I can control either. I have to just, kind of roll with it, and when something comes up, take action quickly to stop it. Now, it's not always bad things. There's there's some men that work on boats that think women shouldn't be there, and I ran into this year, and this man is no longer working on my boat anymore. He was I shouldn't say he was a good man because he was really awful for that person, but he was a competent individual in his capacity on board. He knew his job and he could do it well, but I couldn't have him on board while there was women, and that's it. Um, it's too bad, but sometimes that's what happens. So I had to take action and do what I had to do, but it's not fair. And like I said, I can't prevent it. It's a challenge, and that goes back to what I always tell people. Hardest part about my job is working with the people, is managing the people to work towards the common goal of the safe, efficient transport of cargo. Yeah, that was a really sucky time this year. Okay, that's Richard. Yeah, thank you, Richard. Great. Fortunately, wasn't able to get into the Great Lakes Maritime Academy this year. Yeah, you could. Uh, Great Lakes Freighters. All right, there's two ways to get to where I am. First is you go to school, you get into a school, you go take all the classes, you get your cadet sea time, you come out at the other end with a mate's license, and then you still don't know anything. And that's the truth because that's what happened to me. That's what happens to every cadet. Every cadet goes to school for 3 years, they learn a whole bunch of stuff, they pass a bunch of exams, they get a license, and they're still useless out on deck. Now, that's not to say they didn't learn anything. I learned a lot, but there's the practical side of things, which is what Lakers thrive on, right? Lakers big part of what Lakers do is practical, and a smaller part is theoretical, um, you know, knowledge and that kind of stuff. The practical is very high. Now, when you're a cadet, you get 36 day or 365 days of sea time in order to qualify to get your mate's license. I don't know if that's the same in the US. I'd have to look that up. In Canada, that's what you need. You need a whole year. So you only have a whole year experience at the job before you're put into a mate's position where you are in charge of the watch and expected to monitor people that have been doing it for 12 years. And that's the reality of the situation. Um, Not to say that you can't. There's lots of people that go through that way, but you have to acknowledge that there's going to be things that you're going to need to learn after you get your mate's license. And don't be one of those people that go to school for 3 years and they come out and they think they know everything, and then things go wrong and they can't figure out why. And I've seen that happen too. But I've also seen guys that are really successful because they listen and they're able to lead the team rather than um, try and boss it around. Anyway, so school, 3 years, 365 days of sea time, 3 years of school, and then you get a mate's license, and then you can work up from there doing exams and whatever. The other way, which may be a good pathway for you, I don't know what your life situation is, so you'll have to make this decision for yourself. You can start out as a deckhand and then work your way up. It's called the hawse pipe method on the Great Lakes. So you start out as a deckhand, you gather some sea time, and you start, and then you get your bridge watch or your AB certificate. In Canada, we call it a bridge watch. I think the USA they call it a AB endorsement or something like that. Anyway, um, owner 10 out. Hey, thank you. I'll see you. I guess I'll see you on the next live stream. Yeah, no, I don't mind doing this one bit. I actually really enjoy the interactions here. But I'm going to get back to this hawse pipe thing. So hawse pipe, no school. Well, kind of. So you go out, you be a deckhand, and then you get sea time, and you do some They do an exam, you get your bridge watch, and then you move up to the AB, able-bodied seaman. That is your wheelsman. Um, so the guys that actually steer the ship, and then they help up, they help out on deck too. So then you deckhand, AB, wheelsman, and then after you acquire enough time there, and then you um, write some exams. You basically you challenge the exams, and then you can get a um, officer of the watch license, watchkeeping mate. So you have to do some exams, and then you have to do some courses, and then you can get your officer of the watch license that way. Now, I'm not specifically sure in the US, but in Canada, it takes about the same amount of time to go through the cadet program as it does to do the hosepipe to get your watchkeeping mate. Uh, two very different methods, but they both have the same kind of end. After you get the watchkeeping mate, then it's just more exams, more sea time, and everything like that. So you can move up that way, but you have to get in with. I think Rand has a union. I think most of the Laker companies on the U.S. side are unionized. I'm not sure. You have to check. Um, I know one of the big ones is the Seamen's International Union. What's their website? Give me their website. Seafarers.org, I think is the US one. All right, Great Lakes Freighters. Verify that I'm human. Okay, I'm pretty sure I'm human. Yes. Seafarers.org. That is the website, and that'll take you to see these guys. Oh, there it is. All right. So for American flag ships, they must have American flag or American people working on them. This is not specific to just the Great Lakes. Seafarers.org, the Seamen's International Union, they cover seagoing vessels as well. There's a guy, Joe Franta. I think I'm saying that name right, Joe Franta. He's got a YouTube page too. Does great videos. He's in. I don't know what union he's in, but he goes around to different vessels and he talks about what it's actually like to be on these different ships. It's really great. I find them very interesting. But yeah, Joe Franta does this. He's in the union. I don't know which one. It might be this one, but he goes around and does different things. So if you can't get into the school this year, that's definitely something to do. I know the maritime academies. They always look for people with um, the maritime academies always like people with experience on ships because they are usually the ones that complete the schooling. They have a higher success rate because they already know what it's like to be on a ship. A lot of people get blindsided when they go to college and then they go out on their first work term and they say no. But yeah, call a union up and see if you can get in with somebody. When you first start out, you're going to be taking the less desirable jobs. Got to start at the bottom. I started at the bottom. Everybody does. We had a saying back when I was in college that cadets have to reach up to touch the bottom because we were the bottom of the barrel on the totem pole. That's for sure. Um, yeah, let's catch up here a little bit. Mary, isn't there? I don't know if there's a woman captain on Sykes or not. I don't know. Chuck says there is. All right. I hear more and more women on the radio every year, and it's fantastic. We need people. Doesn't matter what gender they are. Don't care. We need confident people out here on the water, making good decisions and piloting these boats. We need people. So the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. And we need to start pushing people up and getting them through the ranks too. That's what we need. I saw the ship flooding. That must have been scary. You know what, Richard? I've been in worse situations. Wasn't scary at all. It was annoying because, sorry, it was annoying because the tunnel hadn't been cleaned yet. So I had so not only did I have to deal with the water coming in through the crack in the cargo hold and the leaky ballast tank covers. So not only did I have to deal with that, but I also had environmental things I had to deal with, um, which just made things just X amount more difficult. Would have been a lot easier if the tunnel was had been cleaned out. But because we had salt residue in the tunnel, I had to treat all the water that entered into the tunnel as cargo residue water that had been in contact with salt. Now, in Lake Michigan, as requirement for salt, we can discharge salt in Lake Michigan, salt cargo residue, but we have to be outside. It's 12 miles, but I think in the rules it says 13.8 statute miles because the Code of Federal Regulations deals in statute miles most of the time and not nautical miles. But it's 12 miles basically. So we were going to take the inside passage up through Gray's Reef. We can't do that anymore because we couldn't hold the water. So then I had to go around Lansing Shoal and go up and around. So I was actually annoyed by the whole thing. I've been in worse conditions than that. Well, fires, whatever. But the Cuyahoga, like you heard me talk about this in the video. It's an old boat problem. Old boats are going to be old boats. They're going to crack. They're going to leak. They got old rusty steel everywhere. This is what we deal with in old boats. And when I say old boats, I mean anything over 30 years. Anything past the 30-year mark is going to react like this because it's been through enough layup seasons to have new steel put in everywhere, and then you know. So maybe the best way to describe this is the Cuyahoga. So the Cuyahoga was built in 1943. They do work on these ships every winter to repair or maintain, do whatever. It's good work that they do. Now, when they're doing this in the winter, the ship is deballasted. All the water's out. So the ship is kinda arched like this. So the stern is sat down low in the water because that's where the engine room is. That's where in the winter when it's all shut down, that's the heaviest part of the ship is the stern section where the engine room is. So that'll sit low and then everything else kinda arcs up like this. So when you're replacing steel and the ship is in a flexed position like this, you are locking in forces in this position. So that's why that's why I think that the Cuyahoga in ballast condition had a natural hog, so, uh, it would be arched like this of 11 inches. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but it should be 0. We should be pretty much flat, um, excuse me, in ballast condition. So, when you're doing that every winter for so many years, you lock all these forces in, and then things start to crack and change because now you've got all this stress that you're locking into the ship's structure and eventually something gives way, and then when something gives way you have a crack over there, you cut it out, you replace the steel, you fix it. Now that's strong, the forces are still there, so then they go to the next place and now you get a crack over here, and so then you cut it out, you do the proper repair, you cut it out, replace the steel, make that place strong, forces are still there. So now the next weakest place. And now you're just playing this big game of chase the cracks around the ship. And that's true for any ship that I've been on, whether it was a passenger ship, cargo ship, anything. Don't fool yourself. Those passenger ships, they have big cracks. Um, they're not they're not in the ballast tanks. Those cracks form on passenger ships in the vertical spaces where the staircases and the elevators are. This is one of the neat parts about my job. The one time I got to ride on top of the elevators, and I would monitor where the doors are. There would be cracks in the corners of the elevator, the steel doorways where the elevators were, and I monitor them, and then I would organize for them to get repaired when we got into dry dock and all that stuff. It was actually pretty cool. But all the ships have got cracks. It's part of shipping. This is something that happens. It's because the ship is big, it bends, it moves, and it's made out of steel. So that's just what happens. Oh boy, I was talking about that for a little while. Yeah, cracks are fun. I have a long history of cracks on boats. There's long, interesting history. CSL has a few women captains, I believe. Yeah, it's great. I hear a lot on the USA side as well. The footers, they got women on there. I hear them on the radio all the time. It's everywhere. Every year, it's becoming more and more, and it's great. Cheryl, thanks for the answer on women. My daughter said ex-Navy, served on the carriers. Oh yeah, well, no problem, Cheryl. I love doing this kind of stuff. And yeah, Chuck, and there's a whole bunch of people here that are really wealths of information about just about anything. Um, I just want to share what I know with everybody, and then I find more people that like to share, and it's great. I'm actually having a very interesting conversation with a man on TikTok over the last day about freeboard. Now he's made a lot of very good points, but his points aren't what I was getting at in the video. Um, Yeah, it's talking about freeboard and Great Lakes ships, and he's saying that, Salties have less freeboard than Lakers do, and there's different rules. Under the same rules, yes, he's correct. But because different rules apply to Lakers, Lakers will have less free, or they're required to have less. Freeboard is a measurement of residual, or not residual, that's the wrong word, reserve buoyancy. And inland, the Great Lakes rules, Canada and US, require less reserve buoyancy than ocean ships. So um, salties would be required to be higher in the water than Lakers would. Fact. But he is a very intelligent individual, and I don't think he understands what I'm saying about different rules applying. Um, yeah, it's actually a really great conversation. I'm enjoying talking with him. It's really great. Very much what I was thinking today. I'm not sure. College would be the best path for me. Captain Dave, an American Mariner, said almost exactly what you said. Try it. If you didn't get into the school this year, that's not a big deal. Lots of people don't get in every year. It, don't even worry about it. But I'm telling you, if try the apprentice, like go out as a deckhand for a season, see if you can get out as a deckhand anywhere, any ship, and then apply again. Because I know these colleges, these maritime institutions, they love seeing that there is a person coming, applying, and they have experience in the profession that they're training people to do, because their likelihood of carrying through the program and making a success out of it is higher. I know that's what Georgian College did. I know a lot of the people that I went through school with, they were deckhands and they were going through to get their license. Peter Janelle, Joe Francis, SIU guy. That's fantastic. SIU. So that's exactly the one, the website there that I put up. I wasn't sure which union he was in, but I knew that Joe Franta was in a unit, and I love his videos. He goes around and he talks about all these different boats. It's fantastic. American SIU has an ABS apprenticeship program there. Yeah, see, Peter's got fantastic information for you there. Great Lakes Raiders. I'm not I'm not very familiar with the US side because that's not the side that I came up on. I'm more familiar with the Canadian side because I've been through it, and that's the side I know. I know they're similar, but I also know that there's differences because I've read a lot of the CFR rules, and they're not the same as Transport Canada. They are different in certain places. For example, one thing that I find very strange that's a difference between Canada and the US way of ship construction. Emergency lighting in Canada is allowed to be plugged into a socket. So like you would plug in into your house, the emergency lighting can be plugged in. But in the American way, every US Coast Guard guy I've talked to, he says, "Oh well, in the US Coast Guard that has to be hardwired, can't be a plug." So there's things like that, right? It's close. Both ships require emergency lighting, but there's two different ways to do it. So it is different. I'll help anyone any way I can, but yeah, Peter obviously knows what he's talking about here. So that's good information. It's a nice thing about having these groups is, people can share information. Back in the day with Empire Studio. You got to be real smart to be the captain for sure. Well, You learn by doing a lot of the time, and what I often tell people is, the only difference between me and a deckhand is I failed more times than the deckhands tried. Um, I'm not perfect. I recognize that. Um, the team does support me a lot in different instances, and you'll hear me talk about that in my videos too. I do know a lot about regulations because I've been the prime target in witch hunts, let's say, when things have happened. So the thing about the maritime industry is when something goes wrong and there's a big loss, like with a dollar amount tagged to it, in order for insurance to pay out, sometimes there has to be an individual at fault for human error. Um, I want to use an example, but I don't want to talk about Mitch McCotton. Mitch McCotton, when the Mitch McCotton cracked in Lake Superior, what was that, last year? Captain got fired. That's what happened. Now, I don't know all the details, so I don't know specifically what everything was. Everything was kept very quiet from a company perspective, but I can tell you that captain was let go from that incident. Speculation was that because um, the ship had a crack in it, in order for the insurance to go through, uh, they had to demonstrate human error. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I know in the incidents that I've been a part of as captain, I've been the main target and the first person that they want to talk to. Regulatory bodies, pretty much everybody. Engine room fire didn't want to talk to the chief first. It was me. And they were asking me things like, well, about that valve that got stuck. Ask me how many times, how often do we test it? It's not within the captain's regular duties to test um, the fire pump, regular duties. Now, what I had done, and I've told every captain that I've worked with or talked to about this, is years ago when I first got promoted, I noticed that we were Lloyd's back then on the Cuyahoga. I noticed that the Lloyd's surveyor, the representative from Lloyd's, whenever he wanted the annual fire drill done, he always asked for two fire hoses to be rigged up and the emergency fire pump to be turned on, and one hose ran forward from most forward hydrant we could reach, and one from the most aft hydrant that we could reach. And he wanted to see a full stream from both hoses at the same time while the emergency fire pump's running. Now, because I noticed that he always asked for this, I started doing it in my fire drills because I wanted to make sure that it worked. That is one thing that saved me in that engine room fire that we had, because they came at me, Transport Canada, TSB, they were all asking about how often that fire pump is tested. And I was able to tell them that I test it at least once a month when I do the fire drill. And they said, prove it. And so for every fire drill record that I had done on that ship, on the Cuyahoga, from when I became captain until the incident, there was always an entry there saying emergency fire pump online, full stream noted forward and aft on whatever side I was doing it on. And that saved my bacon. Now, that's not something that I was demanded to do. That is something that I noticed that the Lloyd surveyor always wanted, and then I did because that's what he wanted. So that really saved me there because I think if they could have blamed me for that, they would have. Anyway, so you learn things, pick things up if you pay attention, just notice and pay attention. Alright, not to step on toes, but I know Vibe with Mike helped a couple of people get into the American Steamship Company and they started as different. Well, that's pretty cool. I know Mike is a really nice guy. I talk to him now and then. Mike's pretty awesome. You're only as good as your crew too, I imagine. Yeah, Jamie, you're right. Um, I c I can, it's like leading a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I can get the boat to the dock. I'm not gonna tie it up, I'm not gonna load it, and I'm not gonna unload it. That's, there's people on board, and that's their job. So, yeah, managing people is the hard part. I've been very lucky this year and previous years that I've worked with a lot of really great people. There's a lot of really great people on in the Great Lakes, both Lower Lakes Towing at Algoma that I've worked with, and it's fantastic seeing so many competent people around. It's really great. There, of course, there's some not so great people. Um, you're gonna run into that anywhere, but yeah, been very lucky. Anyway, I've been talking for almost 2 hours now. I think we're at a natural point where I can finish up this live stream. Um, if anyone has any questions, I didn't talk about anything that I put on the agenda, but Peter, log save your bacon. Noted. Absolutely to do because if it's not in the logbook, it never happened. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't get to the things I wanted to talk about, but I think I answered a bunch of questions. I think we had a great conversation here and went very well. So thank you everybody for coming out and hanging out with me for the last 2 hours and 6 minutes. This was really great. I enjoyed this a lot. Informative, and I think we helped Great Lakes freighters there on a course there. So thank you everybody for coming out. I appreciate all of you. Thank you to all the members. Oh, before I go, I am going to talk about this. So one thing I've always wanted to do, and I thought would be very cool, is putting a 360 camera on the wheelhouse for the arrival and departures of the port, so you can see how the ship moves in and out of the port. I got one. So I went out and I bought this. So you can see it's got a lens on both sides. So what this does is this records 360 degrees of video when you set it up. So this is going to be something that I'm going to be toying with this time out. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to do a walkthrough in different areas of the ship, and you'll be able to see all the way around. Um, and I want to try and set it up above the wheelhouse so it'll give almost like a bird's eye view down on the ship while we're doing maneuvering in and out of ports. So thank you to the members. Thank you to everyone that watches my videos. This was bought with funds from the sales from the merch store, from the members, and from everybody watching the video. So without all of you, this wouldn't have been possible. So thank you to everybody that helped me. And this is going to be something I'm going to enjoy playing with in the near future. And the great news is I think that Starlink Mini held up pretty well. So I think I'm going to try and do a live stream while I'm on the ship sometime. So um, thank you everybody. This was made possible by you, everybody that watches the videos, and I'll see you all on the next one. So thank you. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. And to all my friends down there in the USA, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you had a great meal and you didn't get too stressed out over Black Friday shopping today. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you on the next one.